FIA for long has been known to do this sort of shit, right? We've seen in the whole Ferrari incident where we never till date got to know what Ferrari did or what was the deal and how did things get closed. What did the FIA do in Abu Dhabi for good or bad? What was it? Right? We never got to know. Even the choice that we have today, which is the supposedly Red Bull breaching the cost cap in 2021, will it impact Max's championship, or if could FIA impose a penalty of say 20 million or 50 million?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here again, the Right Now show after a long time, almost after a month, because Formula One itself took a holiday, and so did we. It almost felt like a second winter break, sorry, second summer break. It was so long, and it was good to be back, good to see people on track, and we got, our heart full of content because it was a 2 hour long race, pretty exhausting. Not the best race, but pretty happening, pretty dramatic. So we are here 2 days after the Singapore Grand Prix, quite with mixed feelings. What are your feelings about the race, Abhi?
I think the driver of the day for the race for me was the rain. I think it pretty much summed up everything. I think it played the catalyst for giving us an otherwise better race, because we know Singapore is very difficult to overtake, right? It's a known fact. I was pretty much thinking, hey, how are we going to sit through this whole stuff? Rain, for once, did not play the spoil sport. It rather played the sport that we always wanted. So yeah, that's it. That's what actually comes to my mind, because the offshoot of what happened in the rest of the race was pretty much a factor of a rain being there, right? But yeah, otherwise, very exciting race. Whenever regulations or tracks don't allow for an interesting race, I think that's when the nature takes over and it says, hey guys, I know you fans want everything. Maybe that cannot provide you, but I can definitely provide you. And that's what actually is my take on this whole race.
I do agree with the rain playing like a unpredictable or a factor that can suddenly change results. But however, in this situation, in terms of Singapore Grand Prix this weekend, I felt like rain did try its best, but rain did also, keep the track super wet. So because of that, the overtakes weren't as much as possible, and we saw a lot of people just stuck behind, different people. Like Hamilton stuck behind Sainz, and Verstappen stuck behind Alonso for a long time, and then behind Vettel for a long time. I feel like Verstappen still could make overtakes because uh, talent and the powerful car that he has. But someone like uh, Hamilton sitting behind Science must have been super frustrating. And for most part, actually, I felt like the race was quite boring. But like you said, rain came and mixed up the things, and safety car came out, and all the lead that was built up went off. So, in short, I feel like if you want to win Singapore, you have to drive like Checo Perez, what he did. And Checo Perez literally took the lead in first corner and just maintained it throughout. And whatever lead that he had kept disappearing, but he found ways to, reinstate that lead and maintain it. And definitely deserving of a driver of the day. What did you think about Checo's drive?
Yeah, that's interesting, because we pretty much always land up speaking about Charles or about Max, about Hamilton, about Russell, right? And whenever we've discussed Perez, it's always saying, hey, look, is he worthy enough a driver to be in Red Bull, right? We had this conversation the last time about comparison between Perez and Sainz, right? But for some good reason, Perez probably proved every critic possible, right, wrong. For good or bad, I think that's such a great thing for Red Bull, right? Because their second driver is stepping up. But it's also an amazing thing, right, for the sport itself, because you don't want to have every team where there's number one driver who keeps winning and number two driver is pretty much there to support, right? Uh, Perez pretty much proved that he has it in him to win. Not just that, okay, he just drove the race continuously. Needs to be said that there were three physical safety car restarts, and every single time, right, he held on to the lead. So it's pretty much that, hey, I'm not just driving from the start itself, but every single time the clock is set back to zero, I can still get on from there. I mean, other things are obviously there, which is that they have a very superior car and stuff. But Perez was a standout performer, right? What did you think? Because I think we never expected, right? Never in our discussion did Perez even come out of our
Yeah.
mouths. But what did you think? Were you astonished? Were you surprised?
I was definitely surprised because I thought that he would crumble under pressure, especially considering that he hasn't been this consistent the way he was in Singapore. Never put one foot wrong or one tire wrong. So apparently, one of Checo's close engineers who used to work with him in Force India knows that Checo in rain in street circuits, his apparently his bum is like a sensor which can detect the wet parts and track and make sure not to go there, and he's that good apparently in the wet tracks and especially street circuits. I don't know, he just does some magic, like we saw even in Monaco. uh, he was absolutely flawless, and you know I feel like he definitely did a drive worthy of winning, uh, especially with all the pressure coming from Charles and Ferrari behind, who obviously, like later overcooked his tires and couldn't chase Perez. Uh, and then, gaining that 7.5 seconds lead was extremely amazing. But again, there were times where he did some things that were worthy of penalties. For example, you're supposed to maintain that 10 car lengths from safety car, but I think he maintained like some 100 car lengths and things like that. I don't know why Charles didn't complain then. Charles is very, he just minds his business. He's, for some reason, he should be like that. He should complain like how Hamilton or Verstappen do. I feel like that was one infringement, and the second one being chasing safety car, like crossing safety car and going ahead. So he definitely was super lucky to get away with it, because generally a lot of times people don't, and he's not supposed to according to rules. And these are not my words, these are Joylin Palmer's words, who did the whole analysis, and he also said the same thing, that he was lucky to have gotten away with it. But absolutely fantastic drive. But I still feel that again, talking about penalties, the next big thing we speak about is FIA and their indecisiveness. And yet again, they have proved that they're not able to make the right decision. Forget about taking a strong one and in between race. So somehow I miss Michael Masi, because at least he made decision, if not the right one, but at least he was decisive. But this is pure sad, because it's like football. Like if you're playing football, if somebody does a foul, they don't say that, we'll see after the match. They immediately take out the card and show, because what was seen right there by the fans, by the world, by the referee, and by the players, that particular predicament has to be given. It should not be like, hey, we'll see it later, we'll talk to you. So somebody is telling, like Checo is like minister of defense. So he did like double defense. He did on track and off track also. He went and did defense for himself. Literally minister of defense. So yeah, I mean that is pretty crappy. So anyway,
Yeah. It's
what
interesting you brought up that analogy, right? Because I mean, I have a different thought on that particular point,
Mhm.
right? Is that maybe since they can't actually speak to the driver, is there a way that FIA can communicate and ask the driver at least, right? There should be a channel that should be open to the driver, wherein they can say, I know it's very difficult in the middle of the race, but then they should say, hey, look, for the next 1 minute or something, 10 seconds, FIA will communicate and ask you. And maybe a driver should be given a chance to explain, because it's a sport which involves a lot. like breakneck speeds, people are making decisions, right? Do you think that even makes sense? Like asking a driver, say for a 10-second time, they're just saying, hey, can you just communicate? Why did you do this? Right. And if the driver says that, maybe even the driver feels represented and they don't feel like too harsh a penalty or something coming their way.
I feel like that would throw the drivers off the momentum. But if you think it's part of the game, definitely. But I don't think like an FIA official should communicate with the driver, because the driver will be totally thrown off his feet if he is, in middle of driving and suddenly random some FIA people are calling and things like that. Although it must be normal for them, but I feel like the engineers themselves talking or something like that, themselves asking for an explanation. That's the thing, right? That's the reason why team principals and engineers, not even engineers, actually, team principals are the one who take call on all this, and they are the ones who communicate with the FIA. So, yeah, I feel maybe they can, make a decision during the race, and then later there is hopefully a chance to reinstate that based on driver's explanation, or uh, say if there's like a genuine mistake or there's like a genuine glitch in the system or anything that has happened. If the driver is able to explain it later, maybe it can be reinstated or things like that. But again, that later business is again very shady. Yeah, I mean, uh, it's not shady, but it seems shady, at least, because people want transparency. They want things happening right in front of their face, and when that doesn't happen is when people start adding ma in front of FIA.
Yeah, but I think FIA for long has been known to do this sort of shit, right? We've seen in the whole Ferrari incident where we never till date got to know what Ferrari did or what was the deal and how did things get closed. It's
the
happened
20
with
the 2019 fuel injection thing you're
yeah,
talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, what did the FIA do in Abu Dhabi for good or bad? What was it? Right, we never got to know, and it's been questionable one after the another questionable choices that they've made. Even the choice that we have today, which is the supposedly Red Bull breaching the cost cap in 2021,
Yeah.
what will it impact Max's championship? I know maybe that's a too far a penalty, but or if could FIA like impose a penalty of say 20 million or 50 million? Is it even worth? Because I don't think Red Bull they could pretty much gain the 20 million even in such a huge amount. They would probably say, hey, it's okay, let's forget it. Let's just pay it and get along. Is that even uh, a possibility? We don't know, but I think FIA has to get its socks together, right? It's very difficult. Like even in the start of the Singapore GP, it was raining, fair enough, but we have wet tires, right, for a wet track. Why not
Yeah.
just use it? Yeah, why not just use it? Why do you want? Similarly in Monaco, I don't know why they just kept holding on because this is raining and stuff like that. uh, yeah, it's questionable and it's so weird that and a referee, say in football, is able to drive a match rather than a driver's, right? The power is so concentrated, and that's what actually concerns me at a single point of time. It's become more about strategy, it's become more about these refereeness rather than driving, which is the pure sport that we all want.
True, true, true. Agreed. But I feel like the authorities of these organizations, like FIA or Liberty Media for that matter, they're very, they have a lot of things. I understand it's almost like a politics, game of politics, where there is, reputations hanging from the big teams, because teams are what make Formula One. So for somebody like Red Bull, who are literally leading the championship this year and who gave a run for the money of the biggest champion in last decade, for somebody to put a blame on that, it will take some insane amount of evidence, insane amount of opposition, like a majority of one fraction talking about it, to dethrone these guys. In fact, sometimes even if evidence is presented, there is heavy chance that it might go under the carpet, because it's a Red Bull, right? Red Bull racing team, currently almost like the face of Formula One, if not for Ferrari. So when allegations like this come, they have to be backed by huge evidence, huge legal entities, etc. For example, when Juventus scam happened in back in 2004, the Juventus Football Club, one of the guys who is sporting manager of sporting GM of Juventus, he's literally deciding who should come and be the referee in the next match, and he's doing it over calls, and people found call records of thousands and thousands of minutes, and based on that, when that went to a huge media agency, and that's when it was published, and after a lot of deliberation, lots of pushing, then Juventus lost its title like a year later and things like that, and it was huge scam. But still, that guy, he found a way to reverse his whatever defamation suite, etc., and he is walking free now. He walked free back in 2008 or 10 itself, when uh, he won the court case essentially. So it's these are just rumors. I mean, even the Ferrari thing that happened to 2019, I feel like, yeah, it did happen, but then that's literally the face of Formula 1. What are you going to do? It's like that.
I think the worst that they could do this year is probably say, fine, Max, you keep your last year's championship, but this year you're disqualified, right? That's the worst. And then I think somewhere behind,
But imagine how bad
suddenly
it
Charles,
would be for the sport.
yeah, it will be bad, but it'll send out a message, right, to the team saying, let bygones be bygones, right? From today, we're going to be very strict. Come what may, fair enough. We gave you, they could probably have a backroom deal saying, guys, we could have done this even the last year's championship. We didn't do it. This year's championship, maybe. And this is the extreme case scenario. But this year's championship, I'm sorry. And I think somewhere Charles Leclerc will be like, bro, I just didn't drive only properly, but still I'm winning the championship. I think he wouldn't mind. It would obviously play to the galleries in terms of Netflix, and like, I mean, we all know that in press circles we say good or bad publicity, both the publicity at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, maybe it's just what it is, right?
But
But
imagine some fans like you and me. Okay, imagine something like this would happen, and it would literally be that crucible moment in the sport where things changed, but you're like, what just happened? And you just almost lost faith in the sport. And it's happened with a lot of people, like the whole India South Africa thing back in the day, Hans Crony and things like that. It's bad. I'm sure it's nothing of that level.
yeah,
And but Max Verstappen is definitely deserving of whatever he has done so far. I mean, he's a legend.
unfortunately, I think this race, whatever he's done, this race, there was a series of mistakes, right? He got caught up behind Alonso, he got caught up between Norris, right? And there was this whole chunk. The midfield itself was a story this race of two versus two, right? You
Yeah.
had Alpines and Williams both going out, right? And then you had a fairy tale a push forward, a promotion in terms of midfield of both the McLarens and the Aston Martins coming in, right? I think that pretty much summed up the midfield. And unfortunately, Max was somewhere caught up in middle, right? For what all is deserved through. We spoke about, can he win this the championship here? He doesn't. He's not won it, so he got caught up somewhere in middle, right? And then now Red Bull themselves have got caught up in middle of FIA investigations. Max has got caught up somewhere here. But it'd be interesting. Like, what were your key other takeaways from this whole race that kind of just excited you, apart from the whole Perez situation?
The whole midfield battle, like you said, great job by Aston and McLaren. I feel like Lando's drive was obviously better than Ricardo. Ricardo got lucky actually with the safety car and all that, and but great that he maintained that lead and gave Papaya Boys a solid um, 10 points. That is really great, and so happy for him because everybody in the world right now is rooting for Danny Rick. So that's really amazing. And apart from that, I feel like really sad for Joe that Latifi clipped him, because it would have been a good race, and I feel like Gasly threw it away. And I don't know what is Valtteri Bottas doing in the last few races, because in beginning of the season he was almost ahead of Hamilton in constructors, and suddenly he's nowhere. Right? It's very sad. Obviously, it's some of the reliability issues, etc. But the fact that Joe is performing quite decently. So I don't know, VB, what happened to you? Please come back. You were the winner of Japanese GP in 2019, the last time when it happened. So come back and show some of it.
Yeah, he's nowhere to be seen, in fact, right? They
Yeah,
don't talk, commentators don't talk about much, like you don't hear of Valtteri Bottas overtaking, etc., right? But I think, like what the Alpha team principal said, sometimes technical issues, sometimes
yeah,
mechanical issues, and sometimes even Latifi, right? And Latifi proved him right this race. He said, yes,
yeah,
I want to prove that right, and he screwed Joe. But it was otherwise a race of retirements, right? You had pretty
yeah,
much so many people retiring in the field, so many safety cars coming out, whether it's good or bad, right? The race was grueling for the drivers, and it was grueling for us to watch for some time. Like it just kept going on and on and on.
kept going on. Yeah,
Yeah. Luckily, at least there was a safety car incident, and we were kind of just suddenly woken up from our sleep and said, hey, once again, this is a safety car. Can something happen now? Can something happen now? Right. But yeah,
yeah.
some interesting things happened. Like
And I think,
Hamilton going off and all. Yeah.
yeah, I think speaking of Hamilton, just ahead of him, Sainz was there, and we saw. I don't know what was happening with Sainz in the race because he was literally, just being chased by Hamilton for laps after laps after laps, and he just held him off. But then I felt like in the end, Carlos Sainz wasn't happy with his race fully. He's like, fine, I did a decent job, but he wasn't happy for the fact that he had a gap of almost, 10, 15 seconds or whatever to Charles in front. And same thing with Charles also. I mean, he expected to overtake Perez and he gave his best also, really, in some of the points. We literally felt like he was there, but it just didn't happen, right? Because of the track and so many reasons, and him moving out of DRS range because of couple of slips, and Perez just building his lead. So it just didn't happen, and I feel like Charles wasn't so happy with his second place. But I feel like it happens to greatest of drivers because Checo Perez had the drive of his life. So I'll come to that question after this. Charles wasn't, he didn't seem happy on the podium. So, Charles, my boy, if you're listening, just chill, Marty. I mean, it's okay, man. You got solid 18 points home, and even Carlos got solid 15 points home. So I feel like there's nothing shame about it because you literally tried your best and it just couldn't happen because of conditions and things like that. So you should just take it and move on. I think he knows it
Yeah.
better than anyone else, but he didn't seem like that whole, that energy and things like that. So I think that's okay with champions and all, it happens, but I feel like he should hold his head high because he definitely did a very good job.
Yeah. I also was just about to say the same thing. Keep your head high. You never know what's going to happen with the
Yeah.
FIA ruling on the Red Bull cost cap. Just keep performing.
So I have like a couple of questions to you, okay, before we move to the next race. Do you think this was Perez's best drive in his life, or do you think Sakir
Yes.
2020 was the best?
No, no. I think this one, right? This one was more better purely because of the conditions, right? There was this rain thrown in. He's obviously under a lot of pressure, right? To be performing. Probably he would have been doubting himself. In Sakir, it was more about him coming through. Really, no one expecting it, right? There was no additional pressure saying, "Yeah, you got to win, you got to win."
But Sakir, he
But
was in a racing point, and this time he was in Red Bull. I'm
yeah,
just playing
yeah.
devil's
So, I
advocate.
mean, no one even expected, right? There was no external pressure saying we know at Racing Point, like they probably would have come 15th or so, right? Anything above 15 probably was a bonus for them, right? And personally, I think he would have not felt the pressure. But being in Red Bull, like the whole setup, which is around Max Verstappen, somewhere he would have felt there's always a feeling. I think even in his press conference, I think he addressed it kind. He said that a lot of media keeps questioning me. Probably, am I because I'm a Mexican or something? Something of that sort he spoke about, right? Uh, you could see his like that internal frustration. He says, but there's a lot of pressure, right? And probably he just wanted to take it off his chest. And with that pressure, continuously delivering after the multiple restarts, right?
Yeah.
Holding off people, and all the situations in the whole race that he's been through, not at all being on the podium, first of all. So yeah, I think this is probably his greatest drive. I just hope he continues to drive more. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like he was giving a podcast after his race while talking to his engineer. Yes, this is the Mexican way. I mean, like some of those words were just to prove
Yeah.
to his Mexican people that, hey, you know what? Don't lose faith in me, guys. Come on. Because he got a lot of flack from Mexican media and things like that for not
Yeah.
being able to, stay in touch with Max's performance. But
Yeah.
he kept, like insisting, hey, this is the Mexican way. Hey, this is
Yeah, we
that.
don't talk. We don't talk. We just directly perform. We just something like that and all. I
That's
think
what she
yeah,
said.
frustration was there. But
So
let's just hope it's not the one-off thing like how Ricardo kind of just won the Monza and he said, I never
I
went
never
back. I just
left.
moved side and all. Yeah. Now he is forced to leave.
Second question I had about Checo Perez. Yeah, now that Verstappen is almost guaranteed of championship, do you think he'll play the wingman for Checo Perez to secure second spot in constructors, second spot in the drivers' championship?
If there is a, in Uno, there's a card called like reverse, and I'm gonna put the same thing to you. Like I'm gonna put the reverse card now. What do you think of that?
It depends on how high the stakes are. He'll definitely not sacrifice a win for sure because second place doesn't really matter. So I don't think Max will do anything about it. Max will just continue driving like the beast he'll just be on top. He's like, guys behind, do whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. So that's about it, I think. Anyway, constructors is also there. Drivers is also there. So what big deal, the driver will get by being second. So I feel like that's the situation right now. So Max doesn't care.
Yeah, it's interesting. So because we are going to the second leg of the whole Asian thing, which is the Asian leg, which is Japan, right? Do you think Max is much before we actually go to Max's championship, right? Do you think what do you think about the circuit? Because we'll be very excited to see. I think that there's some weird, happy vibe energy in the Japanese fans, right? They come up dressed
Yes.
like crazy. There's always that
You saw
very big
masks,
cheer.
Red
Yeah,
Bull
yeah, yeah,
mask and things like that. I'm like, wow, that is
yeah.
something next level.
Because F1 is more Europe dominated, right? But in a country like Japan, where at least it's not much known to be dominated, or probably we don't know, there's such a huge turnout, right? Probably Yuki Tsunoda is the only Japanese driver on the grid, but there's always that the crazy energy, right? And then the track also is one of the craziest tracks. You have these SS, you have the 130R or what the turn is. You remember? I think Charles Leclerc was holding the mirror and driving in one hand
Yeah,
on the track. Yeah, the track is crazy. The fans are crazy, right? What do you think about the whole Japanese energy, the whole Japanese situation, and the race actually that we are going to? What is it going to look like for you?
I feel like Japanese GP is okay. Japanese GP is definitely not a street circuit, so it's going to be a fun race. Again, advantage Red Bull because it is a low downforce setup, and I feel like Max is going to deliver this time, but he has to get the fastest lap also in order to be the champion. So I feel like that fastest lap thing, somebody else is going to take it. Ferrari will make sure that it goes to, the next race, which is in, I think, Kota, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, I feel like Max, although he's doing a great job, there is heavy chance that he might not win his championship here. So cool. Good with that. I really hope Ferrari does something to make their setup better. Although the last time we saw in Singapore, their tires kind of looked overcooked for some reason, and I don't know why, what's happening, but yeah, that's that. Also, speaking about Ferrari, uh, Charles' reaction and Perez' reaction at the start was both, I think, 200th of a second. But Perez got the lead and Charles had a slipping tire. So, what do you think is happening? Do you think there's a water under his wheel or something like that led to the slippery thing? Because even Max had a very bad start, right?
Yep. Max, anyway, I think he was pretty much going into anti-stall or something, right? Anti-stall mode. But I think, I guess maybe Charles, or like not really sure what happened, right? Probably there would have been a patch of water, some bit,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I mean that was probably the start, right? But it's still excusable, right? In terms of start, there's
Yeah.
obviously the whole talk about, hey, Charles has won these many pole positions and how much percentage he's not able to convert to a race win, right? But
Yeah.
there were multiple opportunities that were in the safety car, which probably for unfortunate circumstances they couldn't really make use of, right? But I hope, right, that he doesn't allow Max to take the championship in
Yeah.
Japan, right? Just I know it's very difficult. Red
Very
Bull have one of the
difficult.
most dominating cars, right? My only wish, as long as it's okay, just prolong it, right?
Yeah, just
Because
Charles, drive your heart out, man. Come on, just go for it. I know he
yeah,
will,
yeah.
but yeah,
Because even FIA probably going for it. There's just a recent news that came a few minutes ago. We started the podcast. Is that FIA probably will announce the results or the conclusions of this whole financial cap thing by Monday. They're supposed to probably announce it today. It's been pushed to Monday. Yeah.
coming
So
Monday.
until then, yeah, until
Okay.
coming Monday, the 10th. So we'll have to wait and watch a lot of other things that probably will happen on off the track.
Yeah.
Apparently, Gasly is going to be announced in Japan for Alpine. If Max wins the championship, it would be a great thing for Honda, right? Being a Japanese manufacturer. Apparently, Nick De Vries would be announced in Japan for AlphaTauri.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, and I think pretty much centered around AlphaTauri, Red Bull, and Alpine.
Alpine.
Much of the news, yeah. But what do you think? What are your predictions for the Japanese GP?
I feel like Charles could be driver of the day for sure, but I feel like Max is going to win, but he's not going to get fastest lap. So
Okay,
that's my prediction for
and second,
Japanese
third.
GP. It would be Max, Charles, and Checo.
I think it would be probably Perez would take fourth his Josh, right? And hopefully there seems to be like a light rainish
Oh yes,
forecast. Yeah, so probably Max, Perez, and Charles. And like you think, like you said, I don't think Max would get the fastest lap, right? The extra point. I think someone else will take it. But yeah, I all want something great to happen in the Japanese GP, right? The
yeah,
fans are excited. We are excited. Uh, Probably some more masala to the Japanese GP would be amazing, because the next podcast would be a more masala curry, more spicy curry. But we don't know if we're going to get
yeah.
something of that. Yeah, but it's all
Also,
prayers.
yeah. Speaking of prayers and Japanese GP and rain, one of the probably the saddest moment of last decade happened in Suzuka back in 2014 when Jules Bianchi passed away due to his horrific accident under safety car conditions, and that was really sad. So I just feel like Charles will have that additional motivation to go ahead and do it for JB17, and also his best
Yep.
friend Daniel, one of his best friends, Daniel Ricardo. I think he'll also do a great job. So just hoping for that. Also, the circuit has some really amazing moments, like Michael Schumacher won his first title with Ferrari, and the famous radio message where he's emotional and he's saying, "You're great, Ross. You're great," and he's just praising Ross Brawn, and that happened. And also Kimi Raikkonen's 17th place to first. Uh, that happened back in 2005, like one of his most amazing drives ever. So
And I
yeah,
think two more. I don't want to give away too much of what our reels are coming, but I think probably two more incidents. One is championships being decided, right? It's a track of championships. Uh, James Hunt winning the
yes,
championship against Niki Lauda in that infamous season. Alan Prost winning the championship against Senna after that suspicious disqualification. Then Senna next year coming back to win the championship against Alan Prost. So yeah, it's been a battle of champions, right? Max Verstappen, in fact, making his debut in FP1, I believe, right? At the age of 17, in Japanese GP. And what a crazy circle it would come to if he won over here the championship, right? He made his
Yeah.
debut at 17 in FP1, and here he is few years later winning the championship at the same exact track, right? What an evolution of a driver. Something that he probably would not have imagined, but something that the Japanese gods and probably the gods everywhere would be so happy about. Yeah, that's a circle of life.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, we are just looking forward for some incredible drama, something to replace Silverstone, which is already in top spot in the best races this year. So let's hope for the best and see you all next week. Thank you so much, guys.